Hi, and welcome back to the 40-day upload challenge and embracing the race. Now today is a little unusual. I got my coffee. As I mentioned before, usually I do these the day before and then you're seeing it the day after, but I had such a full day Sunday that I'm having to do what would upload on Monday. It's creeping up on, it's about 7:35 a.m. So I'm doing this right now. Hopefully it'll be up by lunch. But yeah, I had a full Sunday yesterday between church and I went and visited my parents and grandparents. And then my husband and I had a little date night, went and saw a movie. So it was a full day, and I wanted to be able to give this the time it needed. So I waited till this morning to sit down and read it and do this. So let me get a sip here. And we'll get going. Set it over here. Hopefully it won't mess with the video. Okay. So today I believe is day 17, and it's a really, really good one. It's called "I Want to Be Recognized." Matthew chapter 7, verse 16. By their fruit you will recognize them. So she starts off talking about how a lot of times it can be really easy to spot someone who's a runner. Obvious places, if you go to a race, it's all the people wearing bibs and lined up at a start line. Those are your runners. If you're going to a park or a place like that, you can tell the runners. They're the ones in the running attire, and they're, they seem very serious. And then obviously she goes for an obvious example. If you go to a running store, you would think that most of the people that are in there are probably runners trying to get new shoes or maybe some new short shirts, things like that. People in a running store, probably a runner. And then she talks about cars with certain bumper stickers or those magnets that's declare distances that they have, that they've run. You're gonna think that someone in that car, or that sometimes rides in that car, is probably a runner. And then she goes, besides those familiar scenarios, how do people recognize runners? She talks about maybe you're at the grocery store or in a coffee shop and you hear people talking about an upcoming race. They're probably runners, obviously talking about a race. And her last example that I like is you're driving around in a downpour and you see somebody running with a very determined look on their face. You're gonna assume that they're probably a very serious runner to be out in not the greatest weather, but they got to get those miles in. So they're probably a very serious runner, like she says. So she relates this to, and you could tell from the verse at the beginning, how do people know a Christian when they see them? How does the world recognize us? And then she starts with obvious. You go into a bookstore, you see people looking at Bibles or books by Christian authors, you're probably going to assume that they're a Christian or someone very curious about it. You go into a church, you would think the majority of the people there are probably believers. She talks about people that wear shirts with scriptures on them, or they got the bumper stickers, a little fish thing. They post verses on their social media, things like that. But then she makes the statement, but if this is the only evidence identifying us as Christians to the world, something is wrong. And she references the first verse that Jesus states that the world will know his followers by our fruit and what makes us stand out or look different. If people around us didn't know we attended church or Christian events, would they recognize us as Christians? What evidence could they point to? When they hear our conversations, does anything stand out? Do our attitudes passionately display the fruits of the Spirit, or do we blend in with the world? When life throws us challenging circumstances, what are we characterized by, grumbling or grace? And I wrote a little note off to the side, and this is something that I always think about sometimes, especially when I watch, see all the stuff on the news and everything, is why doesn't the church not being a building, but the church is in the body of Christ, why doesn't the church look more different than it does? I mean, we really should stand out from all the crazy in the world. I'm not sure that we do most of the time. And then she says, in the same way, our compassion and kindness should speak out loud and clear. Our humility, gentleness, and patience should draw others in. Above all, our love should convince others we belong to Jesus. And I went back, because it's not listed in here, but I went back and looked up the fruits of the Spirit, which if you went to church as a child, at some point during Sunday school, they probably had you memorize the fruits of the Spirit, or there was a song that I remember. I don't think I learned it as a kid, but I remember when I was older hearing other little kids learn the fruits of the Spirit song. But it's Galatians chapter 5, 22 and 23, and it says, fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And meaning that without someone saying I'm a believer, those are characteristics of that person. And I remember as I was finishing up reading this, to make sure that I pointed out that all that stuff is great, but to also remember that we are human and we are imperfect, and we're gonna have moments where we're gonna have a negative attitude about something. We're human and we're imperfect. It's going to happen, but it's our response to that emotion that I think becomes very important as believers. It's that reaction and response to an emotion that we're having that can really make us stand out. So I wanted to make sure I threw that in here, because it can be, I think it can be very heavy on some people to try to be the perfect Christian. And there's no way that any of us will ever be perfect. We won't be made perfect until we have made it to heaven. We're supposed to be Christ-like. We're supposed to strive for all of this. Okay, so the questions. Can you identify a time you've noticed a stranger whose behavior persuaded you they must be a Christian? I'm fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of really good people. So I tend to see these characteristics a lot around where I am. I'm trying to think of a specific time. Really can't think of just one instance, because I live in a really great community, and it's a very small community, so a lot of the people that I encounter on a daily basis, embody these qualities, and I feel very fortunate for that. Which fruits of the Spirit do you think others recognize in your own life? I hate questions like this. This is a reminder, I don't read these questions before I get on here. I read the devotion before I get on here, but I wait to do the questions as I am doing this, so it's a little more authentic. I don't like questions where it asks me to something that I'm supposed to identify something good in myself, because then I feel kind of conceited. Well, I'll go through them. I've gotten better at joy lately, but if you recall, I'm a worrier. So sometimes when something is causing me a little bit of anxiety, it was harder for me to find a joy in what was going on. I'm trying to get better at that. And the same thing with peace. Patience. I guess it depends on the circumstance. Sometimes I can be a very impatient person. I think I'm pretty good at kindness. I like to always try to offer, well, it's hard with the mask right now, but I try to offer a smile to anyone I see. Like when I go to restaurants and when I go to grocery stores, I always try to be very lighthearted with the people that are either serving me at a restaurant or checking me at a grocery store, because I've seen that sometimes people can get very grumpy with those people. So that's something I don't want to be. And that goes along with gentleness, and love. I like to think that I'm pretty good at love. I try to convey that to the people that I encounter on a daily basis. Self-control. I want to say for me that self-control can kind of go along with my sometimes problem with being a little lazy, and priorities. So those are my fruits of the Spirit. So we're going to move on to the next question. Are your conversations and responses to challenges characterized by grumbling or grace? Like I said earlier, I think there's more than just those two responses, and that sometimes I have knee-jerk reactions to situations that aren't probably always what God wants me to respond with. I can recall early on in my marriage a lot of times where I would go straight to, oh my gosh, what's going to happen, instead of taking that step back and being like, okay, God, you've got this situation. I need to do what you've asked me to do and then leave the rest up to you type deal. And I feel like I've gotten better at that. And I still know that, like I mentioned, that no one is going to be perfect in any of these areas. But you strive to be like Jesus in this world, to be that light. So I think I will always have a ways to go. I will not be perfect in this world. But I definitely try to not have knee-jerk reactions. That was a big thing for me early on in my adult life. All right, so she ends with John chapter 13, verse 35. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Oh, and I remember something else. I didn't write this down, but I just remembered that all these fruits of the Spirit and, loving one another and, how we treat others. And I think that this could be leading, can't talk this morning, could be leading to a lot of what we see going on in the world, is that all of these things and how we treat others is not just the people that we like or just the random, stranger, but it's also the people that we don't always agree with. There's a time for accountability. And Jesus held, people accountable in the Bible but he always did it with love, So that's the hard thing, is showing the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, all that, and respect and things like that to the people that you don't agree with. I think that if we did that more, maybe life would be a little bit different right now. So yeah, that this particular topic is always a really good one. That as believers we should look different. A light in the darkness. It's another one of my favorite verses. City on a hill type deal. So if you remember, I mentioned a few days ago that this past weekend I had If Gathering, which was really, really good. So hopefully I'll be able to tie in some of what I've learned at If Gathering with some of these. And if anything, it'll be in one of my weekly videos. I'll talk about If Gathering. But for now, I'll leave you with that, Fruits of the Spirit. And I hope everyone is doing well. And I will see you tomorrow.